So, we're over a year into Nightreign, and the Guardian still isn't getting any love. Well, other than getting love from the burnt fetus. No, but seriously, the Guardian still isn't getting any love. Now, before the DLC, I was a Guardian main. Not because he's incredible, not because he literally has the greatest survivability out of all the Nightfarers, and most certainly not because he deals the most damage. I mean, if built correctly, he can literally deal the most damage, but in a real world scenario, 90% of the time, that doesn't happen from people playing the Guardian. That is, until now. By the end of this video, your eyes are going to be changed on how to play the Guardian, and it might make some of you Nancy boys finally stop being scared of pixels and give him some playtime. And I'm also hoping it stops these ridiculously soft gamers from quitting out every time they see someone selecting the Guardian on the character selection screen. How From Software still haven't fixed this is beyond me. Oh yeah, I forgot. From Software doesn't fix the co-oping issues in their games. Silly me. Anyway, enough of the bullshitterism, let's talk about the big bird. We're going to break this down into 3 parts. We're going to talk about damage, survivability, and playstyle. Now, playstyle will probably be the most important part, so stick around for that section. Or if you're like me and have raging ADHD, the diagnosed kind, not the TikTok kind, then skip to that section, which as always, will be timestamped. So, a little bit of a breakdown. Damage. Now, the Guardian has a number of ways to deal damage. We have straight up fisticuffs, like put that shield on your back, pop some spinach or an exalted flesh, go balls to the wall with the enemy, because just like the Raider, the Guardian has the poise to tank enemy attacks, which a lot of people seem to forget this. Like, you can literally put the same relics on the Guardian, obviously not Raider's character skill, the one that gives you extra damage when you hit them with Retaliate and they attack you, but you can put the Dreadlord, Libra, taking damage boost, attack power, you can put these all on the Guardian, pair them with some specific damage negations, and you have another Raider. Granted, a weaker Raider, but with that setup, he would now be the second strongest strength character in the game. Unfortunately, without his strength and dex relic, he does only have 41 strength, 30 dex, which those stats really do suck octopus ass for damage. But I have a way to get around that outside of the Dread relic. We'll get to that later. Next damaging option is obviously guard counters. Now, guard countering builds in solo are very strong and very viable. Guard countering in duos and trios, not so much. I mean, it's basically a waste of time, but we'll get into that a little bit down the line. Then, of course, we finally have the Balancer Relics, which actually have secretly buffed the Guardian in a massive way. But again, we'll get to that when we get to that section. So, let's break down the first damaging build for the Guardian. Now, this kind of build, you want to run his Strength and Dex Relic. Honestly, if you can manage not having the extra HP, you should always have this relic on anyway, because the damage you get is crazy. Now, although you do lose a large amount of vigor, 8 to be precise, which equates to like 160 loss of vigor, unless you're using the Strength Dex Relic on the base relics, and then you only lose 100 because you get an extra 3 vigor as part of that relic. Now, with that relic on, you actually out-damage Wilder with pretty much all weapons, and most weapons with the Raider. Obviously, apart from like the strength scaled specific weapons, the Raider will still deal more damage with like castles and stuff, I'm pretty sure. But the question is, do you really want to run the Guardian over Wilder? Now, in depth 4 and 5, if we're being honest, it becomes less useful because people, they generally die less. Well, that was before the Balancer Relics came into action, but you know, in the lower depths, Guardian can absolutely be the difference between winning and losing. So, realistically, Wilder will be a better choice because he is much more of a simple Nightfarer to use. That is, unless we play the Guardian as an actual tank. Not a guard countering tank, not a shield tank, a tank with massive balls that can go balls to the wall and can absolutely be more devastating than the Wilder. Now, to play him like this, you're going to need to do 3 things. You're going to need to be a smooth criminal, seamlessly be able to switch from one-handing to two-handing your weapon, know exactly what weapon defense passives to pick up, and also learn how to time his roll. Now, 2 of these are actually quite easy to get used to. The third one, timing his roll, can actually be a bit of a mammoth task, especially if you've jumped from someone like the Duchess and you're now playing the Guardian. Now, the reason why you want to learn how to switch in and out of his shield is because there are some very specific negation perks that work well for the Guardian, and that is the Successful Guards Boost Damage Negation. These are quite literally made for the Guardian and the Executor. The reason these are useful is because you can start off a fight by guarding an attack with the Steel Guard, and that way you already have some negation boosted. At this point, if you compare them with some taking damage boost damage negation, you are set for damage negation. This point you would two-hand your weapon, you would start going balls to the wall with the enemy. With this kind of play, you are not stuck cowering behind your shield waiting for an enemy to attack you, whilst your Duchess is doing 9,000 damage per Halo Slop, which, let's be honest, if that happens, the aggro's never going to come, the enemy's going to die, and you're going to be sitting there just cowering behind your shield waiting for someone to attack you. So, we're using the shield to start the negation off, and then switch to your weapon and go beast mode. Show these pew pew gamers that the big burb still lives on. Next up, let's discuss the guard counters. Now, of course, there are still going to be times in trios where you are going to be doing a lot of guard counters, and that's fine. Mostly it's going to be early game, because what you're trying to do is find the passives to get you comfortably into damage type 1. Now, for guard counters, although big weapons equals big damage, big weapons also equals big stamina usage. And if you're someone who wants to sit behind and guard counter, this is a one-way street to 0 stamina. Push back onto the back foot and die. Even if you're a god at managing stamina, it comes back to doing no damage again, because you've hit an 800 charge halberd guard counter, used up half your stamina, and now you are waiting to your stamina to refill before you can do another one. So you're doing 800 damage every 5 seconds. So for my guard counter enjoyers, how do we get around this? Well, what we do is we use smaller weapons. Now, guard counters with certain weapons can actually be devastating. For example, if you have something like the Iced Ringed Hatchet, the axe guard counter will do very decent damage. It has a status on it, it has low recovery, and even if it's not the axe hatchet, you can get the forked hatchet which has bleed on it. So you can do fast guard counters back to back while not using loads of stamina and also inflicting a status. Now, of course, we're not just stuck with an axe. You can use any weapon that doesn't do a lot of stamina. Another great option are fist. And of course, if you get like star fist, you have the added bonus of bleed. They also don't use a lot of stamina. They do great stance damage, and they are very fast weapons with high recovery time. Because at the end of the day, the more stamina you have left, the more attacks you can put out in fast succession. That is going to be the difference between beating a boss fast or turning it into a slog, making a mistake and turning you into KFC. Now, as for weapons and what weapons to use for guard counters is absolutely down to how good you are at managing stamina. But some of my favourites are the hammers and obviously flails because they have the same guard counter, straight swords, axes, daggers, katanas, fists, twin blades, and my actual favourite, claws. Now, of course, a lot of these you are going to need his strength and dex relicon, but as I said earlier, you want that relicon anyway. If you don't want to use that relic for whatever reason, obviously stick to weapons that are mostly strength scaled. Now, of course, the weapons, when you're using them, the stamina usage might not look that different. And on paper, it might not actually be that different. But you also have to take into consideration the recovery time on the weapon as well. Like, I don't know the exact numbers, but if you go and do a guard counter with a colossal weapon, and then compare that to a dagger, you will see there's a massive difference in stamina usage and also recovery time. And at the end of the day, like I said before, the aim for you as the Guardian is to do this early game, do guard counters early game, find the passives you need to get yourself into the damage type 1 so you can actually put out big numbers. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, third and final option, the Balancer Relics. Yes, I know, the bête noire. My most disliked part of the DLC, the Balancer Relics. I mean, actually, I don't actually dislike the Balancer Relics. I think they're very fun and I think they're great. What I dislike is having 20 expeditions in a row being made pointless because my Duchess wants to run the Halo Slop every time. She does 4,000 hit per hit. I don't get to fight the bosses and it's just boring. But anyway, I digress. The Balancer Relics, the red one specifically, was a huge buff for the Guardian, mostly because of the occasionally nullifying part, but not only that, so many great shields have actually broken ashes. And you all know my favourite ash, the Shield Crash Supremacy. With things like Shield Crash paired with the Balancer Relic, the red one, paired with successful guards boost damage negation and a taking damage boost negation, you actually become a force to be reckoned with. Just watch this clip. Now, for the next part, I mean, I've covered this in a previous video, which was the making the Nightfarer's Immortal, but I didn't really go into detail for the Guardian, specifically because I knew this video was coming up. So let's go into detail. Now, the Guardian already has the joint highest poise, joint with the radar, the highest base vigor, and also the highest joint base defenses. So why aren't we making use of those? Not only that, he also starts out with a 100% physical negation shield that you can use early game to not die. If you wanted to go full survivability mode like this, so for something like that, these are the passives that would be ideal. Now, if you wanted to build him like an actual Chad, balls to the wall, fighting enemies, taking names, kicking ass and all that shit, then you would run something like this. And this is a depth 5 trio scaled Libra. And as you can see, like, he's not really doing any damage. With the post damage, partial HP restoration and post damage attacks, with the negations I have stacked, you can see I am not taking any damage basically. And I'm also losing 2 spaces for passives here because I'm using the boss arena mod, which means the weapons that you choose, like the shield and the claws that I'm using, they can't have passives on. So you could just imagine how much stronger he can be whilst not taking damage. Now, of course, this is perfect scenario. Like here I have a taking damage boost damage negation plus 36, a landing charge attacks boost damage negation plus 40, and then also successful guards plus 24 damage negation. Now, obviously, that's perfect scenario, but it's quite easy to actually create. Now, again, as I mentioned, I'm also losing 2 spaces for passives. So you could easily put another 2 damage negations on and just go balls to the wall with this playstyle. With his strength, dex, relicon, and some raptor's talons, you can see how strong he can actually become. But of course, you want to find a middle ground. You want to be able to stack damage negation, but also have attack power-ups, so your team isn't the only part that's putting out damage. Now, we mentioned the guard counter playing earlier, and honestly, for guard counters, there isn't much to discuss outside of what I've already mentioned. But if you do want to stick to guard counters, then, you know, pick up guard counter buffs, make use of the smaller weapons with lower recovery, and play that way. But if you really want to help your team, you really want to be aiming for the playstyle 1. But for the guard countering build, this is what I would run, something like this. Now, finally, and this is the way I've been playing the Guardian a lot lately, mostly because I've been on a real shield journey, shall we say. So, if you wanted to run like a balancer Guardian, then I would run a build like this, and I would use passives like this. Now, I'll show you a clip here and just how strong he can actually be. And running a build like this, you can actually output crazy damage. Now, you don't realistically need the strength and dex relic because it's a shield Ash of War. And shields generally, the Ashes of War will scale mostly with strength, I believe. So you don't actually have to run it, but if you wanted extra damage, obviously, strength and dex relic. As for passives, it's basically the same as what you were running before for any skill build, plus the successful guards on damage negation. And also remember, if you are focusing on a shield Ash of War, you have 5 slots for passives, because you don't need a weapon. Obviously, I would always advise having a weapon for revives and stuff like that, but if you're focusing on the shield Ash of War, you no longer need the space open for a weapon that you're going to be using to guard counter with. And obviously remember, you can also guard counter with the shield. So, conclusion for my 3 damage types. Aim for damage type 1 always. Use damage type 2 until you get to damage type 1, you know, finding the right passives and stuff. Or just use a balanced build and aim for a really good shield Ash of War, like Shield Crash or the Tongues of Fire, anything like that, basically. Now, hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight into how I will play the Guardian. At the very end of the video, I'll have all 3 of the builds that I would run for each type. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some general tips that you, if you're a Guardian main, you might know these tips. Some you might not. First up, and in no particular order, HP recovery upon successful guards got a decent buff recently, so if you can fit it into your build, make sure you're using it. Damage is more important than blocking, so attack the enemy. Always, and I mean always, run dormant shields. You will find a weapon. Just running to the Night Invader camp means you're going to get a fairly decent weapon, so make sure you're focusing on finding a really good shield. Partial HP restoration, stamina upon landing successful attacks, HP recovery upon successful guards, and also the shockwaves from Steel Guard is an insane combo. And if you're in a sticky situation, this is a one sure way to make sure your survivability is very high. Always negation over HP. Negation will give you more effective health over boosting your HP. See my previous video to understand that. Now, of course, there are many other ways that you can play the Guardian. This is not to say this is the best way to play him. This is the way that I play him and people have asked for. Now, obviously, there are things like charging the Halberd gives you the Whirlwind, drawing aggro whilst blocking, you know, successful guards gives you extra ult charge back. All of these are amazing things that will work for the Guardian. It all just depends on how you like to play him. Me personally, this is the 3 ways that I play him. Now again, we could talk about shield negations and all that stuff. I have made a video before on all that stuff which goes into detail about each shield and which shield you should be using for each Night Lord. So I'll link that video and you can go and watch that one if you're interested in that kind of stuff. This is just 3 builds that I run for the Guardian in depth 5 and all 3 of them work very well. So gamers, I think this is enough insight into how I play the Guardian in depth 5. Again, I don't get to play him that much anymore because every time you pick him on a character screen, you get some Nancy boy that leaves because they don't want to play with a Guardian. Me personally, I think if you do that, you are soft as shit. I understand why people leave because a lot of the Guardians they play with don't tend to do much damage, so it feels like they're not really being a help to the team, especially in depth 5 because people tend to die less in depth 5. So, you know, I get why people leave. But still, if you leave because someone wants to play a specific character, I genuinely think you are soft as shit. With that being said, gamers, not really much else to discuss. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, drop a like, comment, subscribe. That cheesy shit that helps me out, helps the channel out massively, helps a brother get paid. And as always, I'll leave you with this clip at the very end. Stay safe, catch you on the next one. Big love, peace.